Well, we didn't just get paired. We literally begged to be together.
We worked very hard.
Yes.
Whether they liked us paired or not, we were just pairing all over the place.
They weren't sure. It was Jack Smith. And he said, no, I don't think so. And it was a storyline where Kevin was obsessed with Lauren. And so that's how we meet to help Kevin. But because we wanted to work together, what did we play?
Played the romance.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I remember the very first interactions we were having is when I was harassing Christine.
Oh, yeah, and I met your then wife at some party.
Hillary
with Eva Longoria, right?
Laura, no, her name was Laura. My first wife was...
No, but Eva Longoria was in the scenes with us, I feel.
No, because the first wife was early. I was a secretary. I married to keep from testifying against me.
Hard to keep up with his wives.
Yeah, right? But the first thing, she would come, Lauren would come and make fun of Michael for mooning over Christine. So she was doing like catty. But that was our first interaction, is that she was, because she's a friend of yours. You knew Paul back then, right?
Yeah, it was after.
Because Paul was in that whole mix.
Right, but it was after Scott. And
Scott was on, but I didn't.
Right, and
work with you guys.
Maybe it had been another round with Doug. I can't. Yeah, it had been another round because Doug and I had sex in the boutique. The way I remember.
I don't need to hear that kind of thing. I'm gonna touch anything in the boutique anyway.
I sometimes
wash your hands.
Watch these old episodes, and I, along with the audience, am wondering what I'm going to do next. Remember it. Literally can't remember it.
I'm usually like, I'm not that bad in this. I like it. They did when I did my 30th, and they it's all done through special episode, all done through like, wait a minute, I didn't, and then they flash you back, and we would all go look at the camera, all the TV, and I remember Judith, played Judith Chapman played my mom. We stood there and go, frickin' Oscars. It was just. And it was really fun stuff. It was really good stuff. But some people just skip. We don't need to see the flashbacks. Just let's go to them.
Oh, no,
but I wanted to see everything. They asked you, and I said I want to see them all. And it was just amazing. It really takes you back, because you do forget some of the amazing stuff that and the people you knew and worked with.
Well, I can't believe our writers remember as much as they remember. And sometimes they give me lines from my past, and I'm like, what? Who was that? And I have to look it up. Luckily, someone remembers, because you can't rely on me at all.
There's a big book somewhere, we hope.
But to be able to go through the big book for each character is pretty amazing.
So that's back there. It was all involved with Kevin, who was my little brother. That was Greg Rickard. And he had a massive crush on Lauren. And that's why he fell in love with Lauren. Because I had no money to bail my brother out of jail, and I knew he had this claustrophobia, and that he was just this close to the edge, and he had huge emotional problems. And Lauren paid to get him out of prison. And I think that was kind of the first, wow, okay. But that was great. And then wasn't he trying to jump out the window at some point when you were there?
I think I remember this. I paid
did that.
For what?
I kept him from jumping.
Okay. No, it's full. I have to remember things. First of all, Jack Smith then wrote us an amazing story. Josh Griffith wrote us the incredible story of How Far Would You Go to Protect Your Family story. We've had these emotionally rich storylines, but I also think it has a lot to do with our dynamic and our comfort with each other, because I think that plays. It plays how we feel about each other, nothing's uncomfortable.
And it was interesting, because I've never been in a position where I've had to play romance with someone I didn't like as and I get it. It doesn't have to be that way, but I've been very, very lucky. But I have played enough couples that it's really interesting when you automatically have a comfort with somebody, a physical comfort especially. And I will tell that story about Christoph when we're sitting in the little
Oh,
cafe, and
right.
we were sitting there. They had cut, it's one of those long days, and everybody left set, and we were still talking, and we still had our hands, we as like we were sitting there when we were Michael and
Right.
Lauren.
We're either still holding hands or we're dancing in
Yeah,
the
and then
corner.
Christoph came in and said, guys, the scene's over," and
We
we
didn't
didn't
even
even
notice.
notice that was any the difference of it. And it's that kind of stuff because those love scenes are uncomfortable and they're choreographed. And I've been lucky with Laura Lee too, because Laura Lee was the first of the people, and there's nothing more intimate, the violence, that I had never done that
Right.
kind of character. And if Laura Lee had been uncomfortable for 1 nanosecond with what we were doing, there were no intimacy
True.
coordinators too. You had to work. I always knew to have that talk with whoever you're doing, whatever you're doing something that kind of intimate with. And if she had, and I had a ball, it was amazing. It was very violent but very
I had a
upfront.
ball. It was very
Yeah, I mean,
violent.
I loved playing. It was the first kind of bad guy. I've never had that, but I do have sisters. I do, I am very careful about, always was, because that's my first experience of that. And then to have someone like Laura Lee, who was the boss's daughter, and walk in, and I didn't know that when we started, and then I'm attacking the boss's daughter, and she could have been any number of uncomfortable things to me. But the reason I have a career today is because of Laura Lee and because of her, of this one.
And you're
Because
a
Tracey,
brilliant actor.
again, because the comfort level was what we did so many things in the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
They blew up our boat on our honeymoon. And the guy on the shore, I was on the shore with an elderly gentleman fisherman. And I remember that we would do some takes where it was like boom on blue screen. And we would just go together. And it was like over and over again. But I mean, it's one of those things. But we've had rats presented to us. We've had Sheila stalk us.
Oh, yeah.
And you're put in a lot of situations as an actor that are difficult, and you're tired or you're ornery, and you want somebody who knows and is comfortable with you in all those different shades, just like a real marriage, because it makes a big difference. Because days are long, days can change.
That's true. Yeah.
And
We all, like, the more emotional the storylines got, I know the more connected we were. Like, okay, how are we getting through this? How's it going? Outside the studio as well. We're very close. We have dinner all the time, and you can't just manufacture that. It has to be there, and I really think that's what shows up on screen.
yeah, it was very like I said, that physical comfort is really.
It's huge. Let me tell you,
Yeah.
we had dinner with my boyfriend, and after dinner, my boyfriend looked at me with this odd look, and he says, "You and Christian are so close." And I went, "Oh my God, what did I touch?" Because it's very possible we were sitting across from my boyfriend and I was like this.
Yeah, we were actually just yakking away. And God bless the boyfriend that can walk into anyone.
Right, exactly.
A significant other
Yes.
walks into a room full of actors, you could lose them in a
Completely.
nanosecond. They're just going to be mauled right
It's
over.
so true.
It's
so
a different
true.
life.
Oh, well, for me, honestly, our engagement and our wedding, but specifically the engagement show, there were two of them. And I thought they were so beautifully written, and they come from polar opposite sides, and it's the working of how Michael gets Lauren back on his side and ready to marry him. I thought was so brilliant. What's your
Gosh, there's a couple. Just as an aside, and I wouldn't put it the same one, but it was my only taste of older Lauren before I was on the show. And they did a special episode, Christmas episode, where Michael kind of does
It's a Wonderful
Life, like if Michael wasn't there. So you see all these people, and everyone was stunning. And I remember I won an Emmy for that show, just saying. But I remember one of the critics was saying, well, he was surrounded by all these amazing people. And I was like, and I had no prep saying exactly. All I had to do is walk, because it would go from one vignette to another. What what would Phyllis be if Michael had never met her? And Michelle Stafford puts on this show as a barfly with kind of like, she let her makeup be crazy and kind of rag it out and bitter, you know, all this stuff. And then Tracey plays, because I didn't see her at this character. I didn't see her when her character was this person, but she has her hair up and she's in a suit. I'll never forget this. I walked through set, I'm watching her do the scene, and I am just riveted because it's this snark and this contained kind of like bitterness, because she's playing the character later in life, maybe we've
80s
never met
Lauren.
her. Yeah. And I was like, I mean, that's an actress. I did not recognize her as Tracey at all, or as Lauren. It was fascinating to see what she had been playing all those years before I was on the show, because both her and Beth Maitland are such good friends now, and it's like, oh my God, you must have had a ball with that. But that one, and then there was gosh, there was like when they almost lost Fenmore in the incubator, but there was
Yeah, all that birth stuff.
Yeah, because
Where then I pass out. He's just been born. Yeah.
I'll think of it. I had thought of another one, but it was because she cheats on me, and neither one of us, as the characters, had cheated on anybody. Michael's never. I've slept before I was married. You know, but that's how long we've been married now.
Well, 20 years.
20 years.
We come to find.
So yeah, I can't remember anybody else. So what was I going to say? This episode keeps slipping my mind.
Because the cheating one?
The cheating one, yes.
And
because we would rehearse, and what I loved, and she knows where I'm going with this. If you've had, and we've never broken up, we've never been divorced as a couple, and I don't know if that makes us the longest continuously married couple on daytime, because it's you know, usually you get the divorce, they come in, you get Victor and Nikki, you go into the double digits. Yeah. But she cheats on me, and there was a show where I confront her about it, and we rehearse in the dressing room, and we're bawling our eyes out because
we couldn't. And I read it, and I didn't think it had that kind of emotion. We start doing it, and
we know that's not appropriate. We're not going to do that in the scene but what was wonderful, and what you get to play in real time, is a couple that's been together for a while. And at that point, you save up the worst things that you want to say for that person. You would never say it to a stranger in a million years. So, and they wrote a fight between a couple that had been together and been through because we both come from very shady backgrounds. And we had that. We had that in common, in that we had been on the other side of good. We weren't the ingenue, and I wasn't the hero at all. But we went out there and we threw down some nasty, nasty couple stuff. And it was brilliant. And it was really, but I remember sitting in the just get it out of your system now. Right. It doesn't work.
We literally could barely speak.
Things.
We were crying so much. And then I went into the hallway to go get ready to go on stage, and Amelia Heinley was like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I could barely say rehearsal.
I mean, there was stuff, and I have to paraphrase it, because like he literally looks at her in a scene, and I remember this line being such an attack, and he goes, "That man has seen you the way I am, only me should see you." You know what I mean? It was much more graphic. It was even more graphic than that. Not two, but it was like I feel it right now saying the line, because it is such a spot on thing that a man would say to his wife. You know, nobody else should see you like that. I mean, it was really good stuff. But I remember that because when we went out, you had no hint of like, you did this. I mean, it was just like some accusations flying. It was great.
His intelligence, and Christian's funnier than Michael, but I think his intelligence, his mind.
I think definitely Lauren and Tracey probably share this Rolodex in their head of knowing of as a businesswoman. Both of them are businesswomen, but as somebody who also likes to is a helper. If anyone's in trouble, she's got it. She's not the person who gets run over. She's the person who runs to the rescue. And Lauren has that as an executive and to like I say, whenever there's a question anyone has upstairs, this is in real life. It's like, Tracey, wait, she's got it in her head.
They call me Rolodex. They call me 411, which of course my manager said you've got to come up with be changed to Google because you're showing your age. I was like, well, I'm sure everybody knows my age. And now I have to say it in like rooms of young kids. 411. I'm like, do you guys know what that is?
Does anyone even say what's the 411 anymore?
Yes.
That used to be.
No, it's what's the tea.
Yeah,
and then of course I had to ask, what tea? You know, I'm British. What tea are we doing? Oh, first of all, that peach juicy soup that could literally stand up by itself by the time we got to these scenes. But Christian LeBlanc delivered. Did you win an Emmy for this? The funeral, a monologue.
I was praying in the front row before anyone else got there, and they have this great, and it's really emotional. And what's wonderful is at the end, Tracey walks in, having been rescued.
Right, and he doesn't know I'm alive.
And she's behind me, and she walks up to me.
Yeah, that was my only contribution. I just walked in. But he was so extraordinary. But yeah, the funeral.
Yeah, that was that went on. I forget how long that went on, but yeah, that was the actual funeral.
It was like a 6
arc from being stalked by Sheila, and then to the honeymoon, and we went through the wedding and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was an amazing wedding. I remember that too. I remember seeing. I've heard that from a lot of actors and actresses. Watching someone come down the aisle, even at your fake wedding, is so emotional.
Oh my God!
It hits you. It just hits you.
It's so true. I was so nervous, and I was married at the time. I was so nervous the night before our TV wedding, like I was getting married for real, and the emotion of we had to do our vows, and of course it was like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
We were given 10 minutes and one take of these very like page and a half vows. But I mean, if you watch them, we're barely getting through them because we're crying so much. We're so filled with emotion.
Oh yeah. And I remember turning up to see Tracey coming in with a beautiful, and Greg is next to me. I mean, it was just in a full room with I think it was a whole cast out there.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it was really, that was the last shot of the Colonnade Room, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. Have we had the Colonnade Room?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Big and full.
It was beautiful. They did a great job with our wedding.
I don't remember that.
Well, seeing that I can barely remember a story.
I remember the cancer one where Michael has it, but they shortcut it.
They did shortcut it.
We had a change in upstairs.
Right.
And I had done a lot of research, and it was a prostate cancer storyline. So it was actually, we had women writers the head writer at the time, and it was written from the POV of Lauren, of the wife.
It was great.
And I started getting involved in a charity down in New Orleans, and I would hear about. I mean, I remember I would call this doctor for this. He was a wonderful doctor. He was a researcher who was kind of the top of his game in prostate cancer studies and research. And he was at Tulane, my alma mater, and he gave me his number, and we could talk to him. And I remember he said, "Hey," I called him just for arbitrary. It's not a big thing, and he goes, "Oh yeah, no, I have plenty of time. I'm just on my way to the OR." I said, "No, you can't stop on the way to surgery. This is not anything that could ever be that important." He said, No, this is important, because this was his point, that a man, first off, that anyone but a man is going to talk publicly about prostate cancer, because this is not a fatal cancer. It's a cancer that men die of because they won't talk about it, or they won't go get help. They will postpone it because it has so entwined. And I thought, my God, the sexual stalker on the show gets prostate cancer, and it explains what an extreme reaction he is. When I learned that from the script, but then when you learn in real life, it's not extreme at all. This is the men do it all the time. We were at our little cafe down in New Orleans, and I remember someone was wearing a woman, one of the waitresses, and she goes, my husband was like Michael. He waited he had passed away.
Wow.
So it was one of those fascinating things. But I mean,
but I love the way they wrote it. I mean,
yes,
she didn't care. Whatever it was that kept him alive, that's what she wanted to do. And he couldn't handle that, because they have such a physical relationship, that if that changed, so he was rejecting her and pushing her away. And
even to the point of find someone else.
Right.
I mean, it was really interesting, because I love that, because I think one of the gifts that the writers of the show in all the different permutations over the 30 years of it is that they have really kept the characters, the core, and they built the family. They built our, brother-in-law, sister-in-law. We have, Judith Chapman. They and Greg Rickard, amazing. Elizabeth Hendrickson. I mean, as you build these people, and it would just blend it together. But they took care to keep the history relevant, which was fascinating. Like I said, to make a sexual predator a victim of prostate cancer. So it even made it more like, which is the kind of standard thing you hear is like, my manhood is so tied into this.
Right.
And if I lose that, then there's no point. Then just let me die.
But
literally,
I loved that for a long time, we were the family that put the fun in dysfunction. Mm-hmm. And so you'd see the perfect Abbott Thanksgiving, the perfect Newman Thanksgiving. And then at our house, I don't know, people were throwing bagels. I don't know what was going on.
Judith would have a leopard print on.
Chaos.
I remember she cooked one time, and I said they would shank somebody if they were in prison for cooking like this.
Yes.
Remember, I just ad-libbed it.
Right.
It was just like,
so funny.
It was, and it is so much fun. I mean, it really was, because it was just a genius casting. I have to give it out to them too, and the writers, because I mean, you don't all gel like that, and it doesn't mean that you won't have wonderful performances, but we loved being around each other and having fun just as much as we did offset as onset. So it was really crazy people. There was a good one where you tore up the
I was thinking about that. The one
divorce papers.
Where you say, when that's right. That I say that I'll never sign them. Yeah. He's trying to divorce me.
Because it was a long process and I was pushing, and she was like, screw it, no.
It didn't stop me from kissing Daniel Goddard. Not that, personally.
I pushed her.
It
was so funny. We do this charity that Kate Linder has started, and I've been doing it for like 20 years. And at some point, we will go to drag clubs up in, wherever, Toronto and stuff, like just anything to entertain the guys, like make it very different so that they come again, because nobody's paid. It's charity, and it's just wonderful. And Canada is such a huge fan base for us, and so much fun. And one time there was all like 30 of us, and because all the organizers started coming to these trips, and at one point, a bearded drag queen came out and started, it was an act, and all of a sudden he's doing a voiceover of Lauren's voice.
I've never heard this story.
And what? It is her tearing up the divorce papers. And when the tear happens, they had paper falling down from the ceiling of the club.
God.
That's
and
amazing.
I thought, oh my God, they went through all this, because it became the place that we would they treated you like royalty, but it was so funny. It was I was like, wait, what? Because I'm keying in, I'm trying to organize and stuff like that. It was, papers falling from the ceiling as they ripped up. It was Lauren's scene.
You've made it when a drag queen plays you. Seriously,
absolutely.
I couldn't be more honored.
But there has to be another one. What would you have picked?
I mean, I think it really was our wedding and the whole story that went from, even with the Sheila and the terrible Tom and us trying to find our way back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but, I mean, like I said, the stakes are so high when you've been together that long.
Yeah.
And I loved that you feel it as an actor. You've got all this history to play.
And that is our favorite, my favorite story is sometimes when they do kind of separate us a little bit, and it's how we find each other back and how we protect our family. I've been asking for a caper for the whole family. That would be
Sure.
amazing. I would love a good caper. But no, I think that, I mean, that, and then when we did have the affair, but we had the affair because he wouldn't stand behind and help our son.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was so stunned that he would turn his back legally on our child.
Yeah, he was. That was Max Eric. Fenmore was doing drugs, and he was. Remember, he bullied.
Yes,
bullied
yeah, that kid.
kids. I mean, it was
Yeah.
really complex. And I'm like, no, he has to pay the price. This he'll only learn this way. And Lauren,
like,
it was
how
a
could you do
really,
that to
it
our
was a
child?
very real kind of
Yeah.
standoff. No, this is I won't have my son in prison. This one. And I'm like, that's the only, this is the law, and this is what's fair, and this is what he did, and he has to take responsibility for it. And she would have none of it. It was really
It was a great story.
wonderful
Josh
setup.
wrote it.
Yeah. Sometimes you wonder.
Yeah.
Nobody's looking at stable sometimes, Yeah, there is the trade-off of like sometimes the default is breakup, divorce, affairs, and stuff like that. So I mean, I think there are so many more things to explore with long-term couples.
Right.
I think, and they've like I said, health and the baby, and whether when there's a great scene when Lauren tells Michael that he's going to be a father, and Michael has to go through all this stuff. And I remember I walked up to Lynn Latham at the time and said, Michael had a horrible father. He had a horrible stepfather. He was beaten. His brother was beaten. He abandoned the whole family and his brother to get away from this. He'd be terrified because he had this joy. They had a kind of, overjoyed husband who hears about a new baby. So Lynn was like, okay, and went and changed it to a scene where I was like, I don't know if I can't do this. I can't. It's, because you feel it's in your blood, or I don't know how to be a father. It was all those things, and you had Lauren constantly trying to ease him. And I remember there was a great moment where she goes, right? Are we happy about this?
Yes. Yeah.
We're happy about this. Are we?
Right.
Because she just comes in and she.
And by the way, she's not 20 at the time.
Yeah, she's
She was older.
And
so
that is another amazing point, is that they had lived full lives before they met.
And she had an older son.
So it was never an ingenue and someone's first time. These were people, I don't want to say hard bitten, but they're people who had lived a life. Yeah, tinkle, tinkle, clink, clink.
Yeah.
But and paid prices for what they had done, good and bad. So I mean, and that was what was so interesting about when we started seeing each other. The characters start seeing each other romantically. It was like, we've both done some stuff.
Yeah, we've both gone to the dark side. So I'm noticing even in the scripts the last few months, they're really honoring Lauren's darker side, snarkier, more quips, more, I'm usually the one that says ass or damn, or I'm like, yes.
Potty mouth.
I do have a little bit of a potty mouth. And, I'm loving that they're honoring her past, because we had talked about it. That's not something that would completely be gone.
Mm-hmm.
And we are the keepers of each other's dark sides. And, honestly, one of us could slip off at any time.
Yeah, and you like to play that. That's always good. I mean, never. I mean, one of the things that didn't irritate me, it was just one of those questions that you always get, which is better to play, a good guy or a bad guy? And my answer now is always, I want to play a human being, which entails both of those things. Mm-hmm. And the world is full of people who do good things for bad reasons and bad things for good reasons. And that's the human element. And that's, we want to play, because like I had played poor Michael from the beginning as somebody who was strictly that way, bad guy, arch villain, and they didn't do that. They didn't give it to me to play that way. They didn't give me the scripts that way, but there was something that was human about Michael. And I think it starts with the fact that where the trap was, which they actually answered the questions, was that he didn't know what to do when you fall in love. That's way too much exposure and terrifying.
Hmm.
And that's how he reacted to it. And that's why a misogyny kind of protected him from any kind of real,
Emotion.
intimacy that's very drastic. And it's always been a risk how he grew up. And that's what Lauren kind of he actually literally has to teach him. I actually say that just a few shows ago, where it's like, me, I constantly say, you know me better than I know myself. She's always calling him out, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, because you even said today, why even deny what you've just said? You know me better.
That's a great
than I
line.
know
Yeah,
myself.
I could deny that, but to what point you know me better
Right.
than I know myself? Yeah, so it's that, and they keep that. I gotta say, the continuity on this show is amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
When you've been on this long and you still, I'm playing dad. He still has daddy issues, Michael, and they're playing out with Victor. Yeah, right. Yeah, writ large.
It's probably Luke and Laura, right? And then I gotta give it up for our own Eric and Mel.
Victor and Nikki. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up. I never watched as a kid. You would hear it. It's always in the air. Uh, and because I knew Tony Geary, actually through the Emmys and through, we just meet in the oddest places. But what a gentleman, and and Jeannie has been on our show, so I knew Jeannie Francis. But I got to tell you,
That's right. I forgot about
when
that.
when you see them in person,
we were 16.
but Tony, when we were nominated together between each other, and he would always have to go, no you, like a couple of schoolgirls. But he was always such a gentleman and so kind, because I remember when I was nominated, and that was one of the names that was in that row. You can't help but be. That's one of the few things I knew from very early was Luke and Laura,
Yeah,
and
so
how
good.
they saved daytime.
Mm-hmm.
That couple, literally pulled it back up out of really, kind of sinking fast. But to be that person, Tony, and to be Maurice Bernard. Again, there's so many to name, but just such a gentleman and such a nice guy. And I'm just this.
So nice.
I was a newbie and just
I auditioned with him.
fascinated by Luke. But yeah.